If I could call the Governance and Operations Committee meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda this evening is a delegation, Samantha Murphy from the Trail and District Public Library, to give us the 2021 second quarter report. Welcome, Samantha, and who else we got? Sarah and Jeff. Welcome, everyone. So the floor is yours, Samantha.
Thank you. So just to start out, I would like to thank Mayor Payson, Council, the Library Board for the continued support that the library receives. And I'd also like to recognize the importance of my relationship with the Trail Museum and Archives as well. So I've broken up my 5-minute presentation into 3 categories. I just wanted to discuss the new format of my report, Summer Reading Club, as well as the UBCM meeting that's coming up this fall. Just going to share my screen here quickly. Can you guys see my screen?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, no. Michelle, you don't happen to have my presentation there, do you? For some reason, it's not.
Yeah,
We have the report in our package, though, I believe.
Okay.
she does have a slightly different presentation. Just give me one moment and
I don't know why it's not letting me share. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
So to start off, you may have noticed this year I've changed the format of my report. I did get some feedback that my reports can sometimes be difficult to read with all the statistics compiled in them, and it just interrupted the flow of my report. So I did create what I'm sort of calling my dashboard, or library at a glance, for the first page. So Council is easily able to just look and see where the library stands. So included in that dashboard right now, we have in-person visits, programming statistics, circulation stats, new library memberships. Down at the bottom, you can easily see our current board members as well as current staff members in the library. The financial information is always tucked in the last page there. And as you can see from my report, the library is currently in good financial standing. So the large font is to make it easy for you to read on your computer screen. And yeah, I'm happy for input in the future of things that you might like to see on here. Yeah, was there any other questions regarding content in my report? If there wasn't, okay, if there wasn't, I was just gonna, if you could switch to the next slide, please, Michelle, and talk about Summer Reading Club. So this year's Summer Reading Club, the theme is Crack the Case. And as you can see, as in previous years, we have some beautiful artwork. This year, it's very inclusive, and it's been created by a BC artist. So it's a 7-week program, and the purpose of the Summer Reading Club is to engage school-age children with the library in reading, in the hopes that the transition of going back to school is a little bit easier for them. Next slide, please. Thanks, Michelle. So this year we have 2 students who facilitate the Summer Reading Club program for us. We have Jasmine Smith, who I'm sure you all recognize, as well as Stevie Poling. So as I said, this is a 7-week program. We are currently in our last week of programming, so we'll have the students with us for 1 more week, and then they're back to school. So we're going to miss them. It's really nice having that young energy in the building. So this year, we also had our students join Sarah's students with the museum on Wednesday afternoons, and we've been incorporating some museum content into our Wednesday program. And we've also had our ongoing relationship with Camp Cowabunga that we've had for years. So our students go out to see them on Thursday mornings. And in my 3rd quarter report, I'll report on statistics for Summer Reading Club. Can you please? Thank you, Michelle. So back in 2009, provincial funding for libraries was cut from almost $8 million to 14, where it's remained. And the total allocation of that 14 million, only 11.7 of it is actually allocated directly to libraries. So TDPL, out of that almost 11 million. We only see approximately 57,000 of it. That's what we received this year. So back in 2019, there was an advocacy campaign created for 20 million in 2020. And I'm sure some of you will remember that because you advocated for us at the UBCM meeting, and we received an additional $13,000 in funding. So we're hoping this year to receive 22 million for public libraries in 2020. So we know that municipal decision makers have tremendous influence over provincial budgets, and we're hoping to draw some attention again to that campaign with your help. So the ABC PLD has created some great talking points and things. If anyone is interested, I would love to share them with you, not necessarily now, but you could just email me or give me a quick call, and hopefully we can sustain some more funding this year. Another thing I just wanted to mention is that we will be starting our QP contract negotiations. I think the date is September 28th or 29th. So Councillor Jones will be joining us for that, and I will report on my third record report on that as well. Did anyone have any questions regarding my report?
Any questions of Samantha?
Very good report, Samantha.
Thank you.
Councillor Santori.
Yes, I can't see on my screen.
Yeah. So Samantha, I'm just wondering if you can maybe just send those talking points to Sandy Lucchini, and she can distribute them. I think regardless of what happens at the UBCM, it's probably really good for all of us to just have those top of mind and be able to reiterate them if the need arises, because you never know when there an opportunity might come up to try to get more funding and support for our libraries. So
My pleasure, no problem.
Any other questions or comments, Samantha?
Oh, thank you, Samantha, and thanks to all the board, by the way.
Okay, you're getting off easy, Samantha. All right, then the recommendation is that council receive the third quarter report. Do I have such a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Colleen, seconded by Robert. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
The motion is carried. Thanks again, everyone, and thanks for your dedication and hard work. It's a real slice, and we get a lot of positive comments about the facility. It's great.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the second item. Whoops, hold on here. Item 2.1, cultural services, that the report dated August 16th be received for information.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Aye, Sarah.
I like that Samantha and I can present together. It makes sense. Did anybody want me to walk any further through this report? We've got some exciting things coming up, but I did include stats, and I did provide you some comparisons from last year and the year before. And we still don't quite feel that we can provide you with any sort of normalcy in terms of our stats. With 2018, we're brand new. 2019, we're still sort of riding that high, and then everything just collapsing in 2020. But we think we're picking things back up, and you can kind of see how those numbers have grown and how they fluctuate a little bit. But you can also see the dramatic difference from 2019. We're at about half the numbers we were. We couldn't tell you when we think those numbers will increase. I think it's just going to be a level of comfort with people wanting to come in and linger in a public space. But we're all working really hard to make sure we're creating a really safe space for people here. And one thing I can say is that we've worked really, really hard. We've worked really hard together as two different staff teams to ensure that we are giving space and time for each other's service delivery. And that's been a really, really great thing to work through collaboratively with the library team. If anybody has been in, we've got an exhibit going on with the Doukhobor Discovery Center. It's their 50th anniversary. And we planned this quite a while ago. It happened a little later than we wanted it to, but it's called 50 Objects for 50 Years. And in an effort to support some local tourism and local heritage engagement, we agreed to exhibit 50 objects from their collections that they curated and set it up in our temporary gallery, and it's been receiving some great commentary. We're really excited. Come October, we are receiving a Royal BC Museum exhibit called Our Living Languages, and it's a traveling iteration of their permanent exhibit that's always on display in Victoria, and it features all the Indigenous languages in the province and a few interactive components, and we're really excited to have that until January, which means we can create some pretty engaging programs with the school district. And you can see I've included some imagery from that traveling exhibit here. If anybody was able to pop up to Roslyn, they had it for a couple months earlier this year. Collections and research, it's been a revolving door of donations. Everybody is clearing out their basements or their parents' basement and getting rid of things, divesting themselves of their clutter. But their clutter is often our treasure. So you can see we've got quite a bit of work going on in the collections department here. We're really excited about some really interesting things have come in. We've been really lucky. Our collections coordinator completed a massive, we just call it a reorg, but it's a reorganization process in our storage area, which has always been the Historical Society storage area, right behind the upstairs kitchenette. Right, there's a door beside the washroom in the back there, and that leads into our storage area. And I didn't show you the pictures of before, what it looked like before. You'll recall that we moved our collection about 3 times prior to the facility opening up in 2018, having to vacate the arena space for the smoke eaters and juggling that move. But we're really, really thrilled with the way it's laid out now, and we can conduct some proper inventories now. So Addison did a tremendous job working on that. You can see our research inquiries. So these are the people that are reaching out to us to access information in our collections. We conduct a lot of genealogical style research for people. Sometimes we assign really easy tasks to our volunteers, but most of the time it's staff conducting this stuff. One of the big time consumptions for me specifically was working with the documentary makers of Trophy Town. So I'm really excited to let you know that should be complete really, really soon. We're just in the final phases of sort of copyright understanding, those sorts of things, and who owns what. So they've got to be really careful about how they license the images and the footage they use. So we're finalizing that right now. The goal is to actually launch this film here in Trail at the Royal. I don't know what that'll necessarily look like, but I know Lisa has been in touch with the documentary makers. Although the facility there is great now, it's really reduced the number of seats in there. You'll recall for Spirit 61 in 2011, I think we had about 450 tickets printed for that event, and it was sold right out. This one, I would hope we could maybe show over the course of a week to give a lot of people an opportunity to see it. And of course, we'll have an opportunity to merchandise with them with DVDs, maybe some posters, those sorts of things. Michelle and I have met with them to discuss what licensing looks like in terms of the use of the vintage logo and the name, of course, but we're not quite there yet in terms of what they hope to do. I am currently working on a very detailed staff report pertaining to the Indigenous history of our area. This will be a really big report, I think, for you. And we are working with the Autonomous Sinaiaks right now to develop a historically and culturally accurate report that will serve not only to support the acknowledgement, but also what it means to actually make these statements. They're not just something we don't just check a box and say we've done that at the beginning of every meeting. To engage in an ethical way and in a meaningful way with our local Indigenous people means that we are in a way adopting their ways of life. So in this sense, we're talking about sort of land use and any environmental policies that impact decision making. So it's a detailed report. I'm doing a lot of reading. It feels like a history essay, but I'm really, really hoping that it will land really well. And some of you will be more interested in learning the really complex history of the Sinixt and their declared extinction in 1956 and what they're doing now to see that change. Samantha mentioned we've been working on some collaborative programming, and we've got a lot underway in the fall. We're really trying to tie in our programming efforts together with only sort of 1.5 staff on the museum side, but a robust programming staff on the library side. We're looking at ways we can use collections to help deliver historically based programming in the community. So you can see here, we've already got some outreach planned for Poplar Ridge, Columbia View Lodge, and Rosewood. We've done these for years with summer students, and they're just the most fun places to go. And I know they love having people visit, and it's just wonderful that we can get back up there. We're going to reconvene our oral history interviews with the library's new recording technology through a Columbia Basin Trust grant, which is really exciting. We've got a museum developed program we're going to pilot in the fall very soon. And then over COVID, I was able to engage with the Age-Friendly Seniors group, and we're planning some in-house programming with them as well. I think every 2 weeks, we're going to dedicate a Friday to the Age-Friendly Seniors group. We're really excited to be a venue for them. I've mentioned our COVID integrations and how that's all worked. And we've also undergone some pretty extensive training with respect to the homeless population. And we thank Council for allowing us to close the facility. Oh, I think that was in end of April, to undertake that 4-hour training. And it's really, really made an impact on how some of us think. It's stopping and thinking about what our goals are. And usually it's just, we need somebody to leave the building, and we're not there to get somebody to respect us or to respect the space. It's just a matter of getting them to leave. And it's really made an impact on how we engage. And we've seen a really good improvement. Our gift shop is doing reasonably well. Doing my best to maintain my budget so that I can have a bit more to spend in the fall on some of this Trophy Town merchandising. And one thing that's really exciting, our summer staff has helped develop a site with Shopify. The Historical Society previously had a PayPal website set up to perform our online sales, but with the move of operations under the city, we couldn't use PayPal any longer because of the, I believe there's some legislation around how credit card information, those sorts of things are stored. So Shopify is a Canadian-based company, and I've grabbed some screenshots for you down here of what this is going to look like. We've got a pretty fancy camera and a neat light box, and our summer students did a really great job in capturing the content in the website. So we'll launch that hopefully at the beginning of September. There's a bit of work still to do with IT, but we're nearly there. Our visitor center is hopping, and I'd say mainly because we are I think one of the only public free washrooms downtown, but we do consider those statistics for the visitor center. We've done some engagement with the local restaurateurs to understand where they've been at in terms of opening. You'll notice some of the Chinese restaurants downtown are still only open for takeout, and I think that'll remain for quite some time. But we're doing our best to engage so that we can provide the best information to people as they're coming in. The visitor guide flew off the shelves. We hardly have any left, which is really, really great. They've been distributed all across the West Kootenay region by Black Press, and then we distribute through a separate distribution platform. So we've sent them to over 30 cities across the province, and I get a lot of support from Kim and administration to get those out. Black Press publishes this, but Andrea and I, the communications coordinator, work with them to develop the content. And we've been participating in a lot of campaigns. So a value of tourism campaign basically is to enlighten locals of how important tourism is to the local economy. Sort of starting at home, it's kind of that grassroots kind of effort. And we're part of the LCCDTS's tourism committee as well, and they're working on a similar messaging. So we're all kind of doing the same thing in the West Kootenays. And just some examples of some really great social media. oh, I love having summer students who have a really good sense of social media and Instagram, and they've just done a tremendous job. So you can see here our statistics. We're just over half our levels of 2019, but we can thank the closure of the border. That's a huge one. It's a huge one. We haven't seen any come through yet, despite the opening of the border on the 9th, but we're keeping our eye on things. I don't have any budget information for you yet for up to the second quarter. We're just waiting on that from the finance department, but you will have that as soon as I get those. So upcoming projects and priorities, the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Report, of course, our Living Languages exhibit and program development, the migration of our digital assets to the city's network. This means all of our image files pertaining to our photograph collection. They sit on our hard drives right now, and they help populate our database, and we want them off our hard drives and onto the city's network. So that's going to happen soon. It's one of these things that keeps me up at night, but it's going to be a great migration for us. An emergency preparedness plan pertaining to our collections. You're all probably aware of the devastation in towns like Lytton. They lost 2 museums. I just noticed that the historical Keefe Ranch in Vernon has been evacuated. It's scary. And we've been lucky enough to have a recent appraisal in 2018 to sort of determine what in our collection is irreplaceable. So we're developing a list of those items that we feel need to be removed in the event that we get close to a catastrophe like that. So that's kind of exciting as well to have that on the shelf. I'll also work with Samantha in the library to determine if anything in her space should be included in that. A lot of her stuff is replaceable, book-wise, but there could be some things we want to include. Of course, our collaborative fall programming with the library, and with the land acknowledgement, I'd like to be considering a redevelopment of our Prelude to Settlement section in the History Gallery. So as you walk in, the first thing is the Prelude to Settlement, obviously, and it talks very briefly about the Indigenous history here, and that needs to change. And there are things that need to come down that are up, and the narrative needs to come from the Sinaiaks. It doesn't need to come from a white settler perspective. So there are some grants upcoming in the fall that I hope to explore a little further and look to making that space what it actually should be instead of what it is now. And that's it.
Thank you.
Good job, Sarah.
Any questions, Lisa? Go ahead.
I want to say thank you. I have no formal education in museum and archives coordination, and it's just amazing how much we learn every single time, and really about the level of detail that is needed to manage a museum of that size and complexity. And it's not only the museum, it's the integration of the library and museum. It's a very significant asset for us. And just really appreciate your excellent work across the board with the library and the museum personnel to really maximize the asset and keep it safe. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I couldn't ask for a better counterpart. Samantha is so open-minded and willing to see progression in this space. And I think we're kind of lucky that we can kind of test the waters, if you will, and see where this integration can take us. And it's done. We just have such a tremendous working relationship, and we feel like one unified staff. And if anything positive came out of COVID, that really did. It really did. So
Awesome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Great job, Sarah.
thank you, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thanks,
Take
Sarah.
care.
Pass the sentiments along to Samantha.
Okay, so could we have a motion that the Cultural Services Report dated August 16th be received for information?
So move.
Moved by Eleanor, seconded by
I'll second that.
Carol. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Moving on to Parks and Recreation, item 0.31, a request from the Trail Smoke Eaters regarding the Kids Rink ice season extension. You have a recommendation before you, but I think, Tricia, you can elaborate more and provide a few more details at this time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Santori. So yes, the Smoke Eaters have come forward with a request to extend the Kids Rink ice season. A bit of background on that for you is that the Kids Rink normally would cease operation at the time when the minor hockey season more or less ends, which is around mid to late March, kind of depending on the year. So the request that the Smoke Eaters have made is to extend the season through to July 15th, which is approximately a 3.5-month extension or service enhancement beyond what we currently do. So this request comes with a variety of impacts, both to the physical infrastructure of the kids rink, the operating budgets and staffing levels to support that type of request that my staff report aims to cover off for you. So I'll just kind of highlight some of the key points under each topic area and then maybe open it up for questions. So under the infrastructure management piece, one of the large issues related to ICE operations in how our buildings were built is that they need to be left to defrost for a period of time, or you can create these issues underground that impact both the facility heaving within the actual ice surface and can create all kinds of challenges that are very difficult to overcome. So right now, in consultation with the operations staff, an off season of 3 months at minimum is being recommended versus the 2 months that is what basically the Smoke Eaters are requesting. So for those that may not be as familiar with the kids rink ice operation, normally we're starting to put ice back in by about the third week of September in preparation for an October start. So if we moved that request to say June 15th, it would give us about that 3-month window, give or take, a small amount of time to see how it goes. The other big issue for us is that we lose operational staff out to public works right now. And so by having the ice season in, it means the plant is in operation and we need certified operators in the building at all times whenever public are present. And that could be public in any part of the facility. So not just necessarily on the ice, that could be in the gym or the McIntyre room, because the ice plant is obviously a part of that whole facility. So to support the actual request, we would actually have to also look to increase our staffing levels, which could mean turning a seasonal position into a full-time position so that we had the number of staff required to operate the actual building. And then, of course, this year gave us a whole other new challenge that we hadn't seen in quite some time. And while temperatures in Trail can certainly get very warm in the summer, we had an exceptionally hot June. Yeah. And we're not actually sure whether the plant could maintain keeping ice in that particular space during that. If we had had a repeat of that in 2022 and decided to extend the season, we're not sure that ice would have been able to be sustained during that time through to even June 15th. So there could be issues even with the proposed revisited date of June 15th that we may not be able to fully meet the operational need if the Smoke Eaters were trying to use the ice right through till that last day. So when it comes to ice usage, I've been chatting a lot with Craig Clare, of course, with the Smoke Eaters. And as you'll recall, back in this year, they asked for an extension of the main ice through to the end of April. And that was to support some hockey camp programs that they were running, which council agreed to. They had committed to approximately 30 to 50 hours of use within that month, and they came back with about 39. So that was pretty much exactly what we had hoped for, give or take. And that equated to about $3,000 of revenue that came into the building or came into the department or the city for that ice use. So the Smoke Eaters anticipate that they would have, if we extended the kids rink ice season, that they would have approximately 40 hours of ice per month on the kids rink. And just to draw your attention that currently we have grandfathered the Smoke Eaters, for lack of a better word, as per when you passed a council resolution back in June 10th to charge them minor hockey rates as part of their ice usage. So the ice rates that would be charged to say a commercial group or an adult group do not apply to the Smoke Eaters, and we have continued to provide them ice at that rate. So all of my revenue generation projections are based on that grandfathering currently, but of course that may have to be revisited. I believe, and because I don't have any other information to go on, we have never really had any request for ice past the time that the main ice is in the building that we couldn't accommodate. So we have no sense that there is a tremendous demand outside of the smoke eaters that is not currently accommodated within the area. So we believe that the smoke eaters would probably be the primary beneficiary of this extension of ice in the area. Just for people's reference, the Beaver Valley does keep their ice in large part in support of the figure skating club that occurs out in Beaver Valley. And their ice is usually in until early May. It kind of depends on the year as to what is going on in the figure skating club. And going back to the kind of the fee piece, we do have a commercial rate, which of course the smoke eaters are a for-profit business. If we were to apply the actual commercial rate for the ice usage that the smoke eaters anticipate on a per month basis, the revenue would jump from about $3,000 a month to $10,300 a month. And so there is quite a difference, obviously, in what the revenue could be if the full commercial rates were applied. So when I jump back to kind of the financial impacts, we also anticipate that there would be an energy cost increase. Of course, trying to keep an ice plant operational as we move into spring and summer will cost us on the energy side, and we're anticipating that to be a total of approximately $7,500. On the staffing side, if we were to change a seasonal position to a full-time position, we anticipate that change to be approximately $33,000 a year. And then we have additional wear and tear on equipment, which is extremely difficult to project right now because it would be hard to envision what the wear and tear may be at that season as we come into warmer weather. But it could, and it also obviously would impact what we can do in-house when it comes to maintenance of our building, because ice would actually be in, and therefore when it's in, we can't do other maintenance on the actual physical infrastructure around the ice surface as well. So when it comes to, maybe I'll just jump to the financial considerations point under 6.0. So what I've tried to do is sort of summarize some of those points around the financial aspects of it into a chart. So if you look at 6.3, we're kind of showing that what the anticipated expenses, if we consider energy and staffing, would obviously be the same across whatever process we kind of go forward with the smoke eaters. And then I outlined two different anticipated revenue amounts. So one is with the assuming about a 3 a month-ish window of time that the ice is in, that revenue could be generated, and assuming that it is only the smoke eaters that are using the ice, which of course could change. The anticipated revenue at minor hockey rates would be $7,500, showing a net loss of $33,000. And if we applied commercial rates, obviously that reduces to a net loss of $15,000. When I jump into the policy and legal considerations, I mean, I've already pointed out, of course, that the smoke eaters are a for-profit business. And so we have to be careful in how we proceed in coming up with an appropriate fee if we're going to consider enhancing the service level to ensure that we're not seen as providing assistance to a business. There are conversations, and this is covered off in the other consideration section, where Rich Murphy has come forward and through the Murphy Foundation has expressed interest in discussing supporting improvements to the kids rink. We're not exactly sure what that means. There is a meeting with Rich Murphy and the smoke eaters later this week with my staff, and we'll be kind of exploring a little bit more about what his thinking there might be or what that could look like. And I think ultimately we don't have a full strategic plan for the kids rink, so it may be something that we'll have to come back and look at and come back to the smoke eaters with. But ultimately, if I go back to the recommendations, it is in principle to support the trail smoke eaters to extend the kids rink ice season, but to a modified date of June 15th versus their requested July 15th. And that we correspond with the smoke eaters that decision would be reviewed on a year-to-year basis as we monitor the impacts on the physical infrastructure of the facility. which we may not see for a year or 2 or 3. That council directs staff to engage legal support to develop a new contractual agreement for use of the kids rink by the Trail Smoke Eaters, and that a financial decision to proceed with the kids rink ice extension would be dependent on a contract being in place. And I'll maybe add that we could consider that recommendation as a full comprehensive review of the lease agreement that includes the whole facility that is currently in place with the Smoke Eaters. Oh, and thirdly, sorry, I forgot one other part. A secondary request had come in from the Smoke Eaters separate from the actual kids rink extension, where they'd asked to install their logo at center ice. And I think the whole idea was that if the kids rink was being extended and they were doing Smoke Eater activities on that ice, especially as we got into the off season, that having their logo on there would start to become important to them. And so the idea would be that we would proceed with allowing that to occur pending an actual contractual agreement being finalized.
Move as recommended.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any discussion or questions of Tricia?
Nope.
Go ahead, Colleen.
Thank you. So I might have missed it in your report, Trish, but will the rink be available for public use as well during that time? So if there's kids' birthday parties or whatever, they could go in and use the ice as well. They can rent it to do, ice practice or hockey practice, or would it be open to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So it would be similar to how you would see the arena operating, well, in pre-pandemic times, where the Smoke Eaters would book ice. We would be able to offer programs or services to other third-party users that may want to use it in varying ways. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I just have a comment, Trish. I just hope that we can work something out that's beneficial both to the city and the Smoke Eaters, because there are a lot of kids that are involved in spring hockey. A lot of them end up going up to the Okanagan or down to the Lower Mainland. And my understanding is this is what the Smoke Eaters want to do, and they want to. I guess their ultimate goal is to make it a center of excellence for hockey for youth, and to be able to allow them to play spring hockey. Having said that, I just hope that the numbers work for them and work for us, and that the facility can sustain it, because it would be a positive step for our youth. But having said that, again, time will tell, I guess, in terms of the impact it has, and whether or not their price range for these kids to play would not be exorbitant to be able to absorb our commercial rate. But that's their business case that they need to make. So that's all I have to say on it. So we do have any other questions or concerns?
Can I ask a question, Sandy?
Yeah, go ahead, Eleanor.
Tricia, on 4.3, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the if our system can't keep up with the freezing of the ice. Did you mention that?
I did. So for example, if we had 40+ degree weather, it is highly likely that the kids rink is not insulated, or would the ground be able to remain frozen at those temperatures? Or certainly the ice, for those of you that are ice users, would know the quality could be highly compromised, where the surface level would almost be slushy and would therefore be rendered unusable. So it's unknown. And so of course, as you get further into July, it's anticipated that the weather would be much hotter here. And, if climate change is certainly happening, then we're likely that it's going to either become more problematic or become a concern until there's either significant improvements done to that building, where we say we're going to try to make it more like the main ice, which of course would cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
It could be that contractually, when we start involving legal people and looking at our costs and how we have to manage working with a private business, and certainly when we hear out Mr. Murphy later this week, then we'll probably have a better idea as to how all those things will come together, because we certainly can't make promises that at this stage that we wouldn't be able to keep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then it was moved by Robert, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor of the motion?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Okay, next is the Trail Aquatic and Leisure Center, the service level planning for 2021. And the short of it is, I believe there's a recommendation to reduce the hours of service due to a number of reasons, but we'll let Tricia take it over and explain the rationale behind her recommendation.
Great, thank you. So as you all know, COVID has had, or the whole pandemic has had a tremendous impact on the Parks and Recreation Department. And we're now seeing the full ramifications of that as we lead into the fall. And of course, we're not out of the pandemic as of yet. So when we shut down facilities and services, and there was many things that could not be offered, including advanced lifeguarding courses that are required for anybody that is actually on the deck trying to do lifeguarding for us. We knew that there was probably going to be a long-term impact, and we're seeing it now. So what you've probably heard me talk about is the fragility of the lifeguarding and aquatic world. Pre-pandemic already existed, and now it is seemingly exponentially more challenging. So what has happened is, in light of not being able to offer those courses, you now don't have, and or even some services, there's pools that haven't even reopened as of yet, like in the East Kootenay, that there's been a very large lack of people that have come through the aquatic training system to be able to take on these roles. And without those courses, you literally cannot operate or hire staff to operate these facilities. So those courses are just nicely getting back underway. We've been able to offer 3 of them here at the facility, which gets those junior lifeguards kind of coming into the building, which would be the level that might be able to operate the water slide. But as those staff start to get some experience, then they can take on the next levels of lifeguarding, which then allow them to actually lifeguard the pool. So of course, this is a time of year that we lose a lot of staff to post-secondary education, coupled with the pandemic has created this perfect storm of very few people on our staff team, which is the biggest reason as to why I'm coming forward with this change to the service levels of the facility. And it's disheartening to see. And it was really unfortunate that this pandemic has hit that particular service, because it's going to take some time to recover from it. And even without people being exposed to aquatics, it was hard to even get them interested in the actual activities. So we're kind of in this world of rebuilding aquatics, and I think you're going to see a lot of operations struggle, and we're going to be in that mix, unfortunately. So all of that said, I'm going to jump to the 4.7, which I think is the crux of this report. And because I think this is the one that'll paint the biggest picture for you as to what we're trying to achieve, at least into this first season. And I'll just call it fall, meaning say from September through till the new year. So under 4.7, I've tried to show you what our current operating hours are for the facility. So this is what the facility sort of evolved to before we came into the aquatic center shutdown. So you can see that the pools were roughly operational about 44 hours a week. The fitness center was operational about 62 hours a week. And we had things like registration was required for everything that you did. If you wanted to come and drop into the facility or go to the fitness center or obviously participate in a swimming lesson, you had to sign up and say, I'm going to come at 1 o'clock on this day and leave by 2. So now what we're suggesting, so in the pre-pandemic days, it was kind of a come as you wish, do as you would like, use our facility in whatever timeframes work for you. And we offered all kinds of services in concert with each other. So we could have swim club, private lessons, swimming lessons, and public swim, and the water slide operational all at the same time. And of course, drove a whole bunch of people to the facility at once. And the minute we drive a whole bunch of people to the facility at once, it requires staffing levels to be a certain number once you have a certain bather load in the facility. So comparing where we're at today to what we were pre-pandemic, You can see that we're about half the operational hours for the pool, about 2/3 of the operational hours for the fitness center. And certainly, the types and how we offered services was quite different. So for the fall, what we're thinking of is we're trying to ultimately move back to our pre-pandemic phase. So I want council to be reassured that the idea is not to have service hours cut forever. The idea is that we slowly work our way back to what our service levels were, and maybe take some of the learnings that we had from the pandemic phase into how we look to operate going forward. Because there were a few things that I think are beneficial that we could evaluate going forward, but we also need staff to do that. So going to what the recommendation is for the fall, it would be roughly going from our current 44 hours of operation to 63 hours. So we're about that halfway mark to where we used to be. And you can see that I've tried to outline what we think are going to be the best operational hours for the building. So you can see Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there's still morning or till noon opportunities. There's many people that enjoy coming in the morning. Our Aquafit programs generally happen in the morning. Infant and toddler programs happen in the morning. And then we focus in the evenings back to things like swim club, school-age children lessons, and drop-in services again in the afternoon. Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoons would be similar, and actually quite similar to what they used to be pre-pandemic. And then Saturdays is probably another one where there's a service level hit, where we see the building not open till 9 p.m., but we would only be open till 5 on Saturdays. And then on Sundays, we're only reducing by an hour from what we actually used to do on Sundays to what is being proposed for the fall. So not ideal, but we've tried to hit where we think the demand is, and try to basically provide as much service as we could to as many different groups of people as possible in the ways that we've historically seen people enjoy using the building. From the fitness center side, it's a little bit easier. We can manage that where as long as there's staff in the building, the fitness center can be open. So we're saying Monday to Friday, really the only difference for them from pre-pandemic would be that the building's not open till 9. It would only be open till 8. And on Saturdays, of course, they'd see a reduction in the evening hours and that 1 hour reduction on the Sundays. So we're only about 10 hours off from what we used to be pre-pandemic to what we're proposing for the fall from a fitness center user side of things. And for us, the big bonus that we foresee, assuming that we can manage it, is that we'll be able to eliminate the registration process for activities. So people will be able to more freely come and go from the facility in the ways they previously enjoyed. We will have limited services being offered at once. So we'll still be able to offer them all, but we're going to have to balance them all out differently to try to create draws to the facility at different times. And we'll have limited group activities and or designate times when those group activities can happen. So things like, say, a child's birthday party. It was normally, tell us when you want to come and we will figure out how to manage it, where we may be able to say, you know what, we can handle birthday parties on Saturdays between 10 and 2, because that's when we have the most staff available to be able to manage that increased number of people in the facility. So it's tightening up how we offer things and managing it based on our staffing levels. So those would be the predominant changes. I believe that on many levels, people have been so appreciative of what this facility has been able to offer all this time throughout the pandemic that I think they've been happy with what we've done, but I do think there will be some concerns, because I think there's a high public expectation that we're going to go back to full levels of normalcy come the fall. And unfortunately, in this particular building, that's going to be a challenge. So I think the other thing, maybe some of the things that I would suggest that we may want to maintain going forward is I'm going to suggest that we continue to close on statutory holidays for Labor Day, because the building's not open, but for Thanksgiving and Remembrance Day for this year. But as we then move to a point where we actually can get some more staff in the building and trained, I think we can reopen again on the stat holidays that we were normally open during the fall and winter seasons, but do it on a registration basis. So we don't have to have this massive barrage of staff available for anybody that's going to come. We can better control that, maybe it's 3 hour-and-a-half sessions on a statutory holiday where we then can concentrate our staff And then we see one group leave, one group come in, and better manage how people use the facility. So there's a few things that are a little bit up in the air that we can sort out over time. But I'm hoping that paints a little bit of a picture as to what we're thinking is going to work this fall. And of course, the pandemic has thrown us wrenches left, right, and center for 18 months. We're prepared to have to revert off this plan if we need to and go back to a registration process. We've just hoping that doesn't have to happen. So maybe I'll leave it at that and open it for questions.
Colleen, you had your hand up? Oh, no, sorry, Robert? No, it was Robert.
No, I was just going to move as recommended.
Oh, okay. Do we have a seconder?
I'll
And then
second
I'll
it.
open it up for questions.
I'll second it and
Discussion?
I'll make a comment.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. So yeah, I'm happy to second the recommendation and just really thank you for your work on this. You know, through the whole pandemic, the Parks and Rec Department has been the hardest hit and the most complex to manage. And I think this just shows again what you and your department are going through, you know, every single day with the pivoting and the changes. And as much as we all hope things get back to normal with the Delta variant right now, there's no assurance September 7th that things are going to be opened up at all. So just, you know, thank you for your good work. I think, you know, the public will see that. And if anyone is watching this, I think it gives them a really comprehensive review of kind of an outline of some of the challenges that we're facing, right? But I think what's really important is that we're willing to work through it and get back to maximum operating as soon as we can. But sometimes things are out of our control and we just can't. So thank you, Tricia.
Yeah, thanks, Tricia.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Trish.
Question?
Councillor Santori is chair, so maybe I'll pick it up. Is there any more questions or comments?
No.
Matter? Okay, all in favor? We move on to 3.3 Butler Park Stadium lighting and netting installation. And Mr. McIsaac, you are on the line to help us through this.
Hello, Mayor Paisley and Council. Thank you for having me today. Yeah, so next up is the Butler Park Stadium lighting and netting installation. And if you recall, this subject dates back a year or so with the netting and back to January where City Engineering Technician Kyle McCormick advanced a report regarding the Butler Park lighting replacement. At that meeting, Council passed a motion that the matter be referred to the 2021 capital budget review. Unfortunately, due to matters outside of our control, we weren't able to get pricing in time for the 2021 capital. And that's why we're advancing this report for this meeting here. So I guess moving forward, so the purpose is to provide council with the proposal for installing new stadium lights and netting at Butler Park is to prevent options for the work to be phased this year and potentially next year. And it's to restore Butler Park baseball field to playable condition in conformity with the directives of the insurance risk assessor. The recommendation is that Butler Park Stadium lighting and netting project be considered as part of the 2022 capital budget planning process. That's somewhat different than what the recommendation was from Kyle, but that is a recommendation coming forward from senior staff. So of course, the background on this is that the concrete light poles were determined to be insufficient to remain in service. They had to come down. On the light poles was some safety netting, and it was determined that the safety netting should be reinstalled for risk reasons, for insurance reasons. And then, of course, we had a windstorm in early January, which one of the Tom Street Boulevard trees fell or toppled and took down one of the stadium light poles. So the staff recommended that we proceed with the removal of the remaining lights in the 2021 capital and that was approved by council. So that project was completed. So all of the stadium lights are removed from the park. So there are no poles to put up any safety netting. Kyle has worked diligently with some engineers and vendors to come up with what we feel is a practical recommendation moving forward. So, sorry, I have a fly that's in my office, which is buzzing around my head here. So the first off, we started with a soil analysis to see what kind of base we could put in the ground. We then took the information from the netting and pole supplier and gave it to the geotechnical engineer and asked him to analyze the best base for the conditions. It turns out that the soil conditions in Butler Park have low cohesion characteristics. I believe that's in part because the East Trail section of the city is an old riverbed. So as with any riverbed, all the fines are washed out of it and all you're left with is really just a bunch of cobble. So, and the nets on the poles also present a higher bending load on the poles. So the base has to be larger to hold that kind of a load. And the poles have to be bigger to take that kind of a load as well. So the options being presented to you today are, well, do you have any questions about the analysis? I don't want to read through it verbatim, but I could potentially ask or answer something.
Are there any questions, Chris? Robert, go ahead. Robert, go ahead. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, so, well, the cheapest one is option one. Is that true, correct? If we move now.
That is correct.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying that is because Goran, who's running the estimates on the sewer plant, is telling me that, and he's gone over this there, that because of the construction costs, some of these costs in the sewer plant are running increasing at the rate of almost $1 million a month when we delay. So, I mean, I'm in favor myself personally of option one so that it's ready for the 2022 season. Thank you. And it's the cheapest.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of Chris? I just have a couple, Chris.
Okay, I was going to speak a little bit about the options. I was just wondering if there were any questions about the analysis section for
Yeah, I do.
the options, or
I do, Chris.
okay.
I can't tell unless it's in here, but I've read it twice and I can't find it. What is the height of the netting down first baseline and third baseline, and how far down do they go?
It'll be 50 feet tall and it will go a number of meters beyond third base and first base proper. So they don't go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And right field and center field, is there any netting on the outfield?
There is no netting out there.
Okay. Yeah, I just couldn't tell by the drawing. What size of contingency has been incorporated in those estimates, Chris? Do you know?
I do not know off the top of my head. I believe it is in an email that Kyle McCormick sent me, so I could find that information and I'll get it to you.
Okay. Robert?
I was just going to mention too, we pick up $306,000 on the Milligan Avenue project, which is we could probably, Chris, divert that to that, eh?
I believe those are different revenue streams, but I can't speak to the financial end on my own.
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot, because I
That's
know we have in the past, but in terms of possible grant funding, is there anything out there that would reduce this number by any significance?
Well, I will refer to the Director of Parks and Recreation to maybe provide a comment on that. She was in contact with the CBT recently.
And if you're in a position that you don't want to disclose it at this point, if just a yes or no would probably suffice without sharing anything that may be premature. So don't want to put you on the spot, Tricia.
So sorry, so I heard the question correctly. It was, can you just repeat it for me, Councillor Centauri?
Are there any grant applications pending or grant possibilities that can be put towards the overall cost of the project?
So I would say that there is a grant application pending, and as far as new grant options, I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any as of this point in time.
Okay, but there is one pending?
There's one pending.
Yeah.
So referring to the interim chief financial officer's comments, he makes a note in there that the capital, oh, sorry about that. I read that improperly. No, I was thinking of something else. My apologies. There is just one pending.
Any other questions of, go ahead, Carol.
Chris, am I
Yes.
correct? We've reduced the number of poles that we had before, the lighting poles, by 1,
By 2, I believe.
by 2. Okay, but we're still going to be covered with adequate lighting because they're going to be different lights and they're going to be more powerful.
Yes, so we're converting to LED lighting.
Okay.
So
that's
although
right.
there are less lights on each head, they produce a higher lumen than the old lights that were in there before.
Exactly.
Are you expecting that will help reduce our electrical costs?
It will.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes,
we'll take all the help we can get. Thank you.
yes.
Any other questions of Chris?
I
Go
just
ahead.
have a quick one.
I got Lisa first, Colleen, sorry. Go
Sure,
ahead,
yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah, so when I look at this project, our general capital for last year, our expenditure was $2.732 million, and approximately 1.5 expenditure at Butler Park, $1.5 million is 55% of our capital expenditure. And I have a problem, I have concerns with rushing this, and I understand that there's a bit of a cost savings, but we have some serious considerations before us for next year. And it's like by rushing this, I feel like we're draining the swamp. We're going to be using gas tax. I don't know if we're depleting our capital works reserve. We're taking $100,000 out of surplus. It seems like it's rushed and it doesn't allow us to bring this forward within the context of all other projects that we have to consider. And this isn't for me, it's not putting it forward being anti-baseball. It's putting it forward having concerns about using the money that we have in reserve and in surplus to fund a project of this scope without having it within the considered within the confines of all of our other projects in a fiscal year. I do realize that this came forward quite suddenly, and it's unavoidable, and I don't think anyone doesn't want to see baseball, but this is a very significant project, and using gas tax money too, I would like to have some reporting on what's the longevity of gas tax. What I was hearing internally was that organizations or our communities are being asked to use it, because if they don't start using it, the program might not be there. And I don't know how accurate that is or how realistic that is, if it would become a reality. So I think there's a role for using the gas tax, but we also use our gas tax to service long-term debt. So I just have some concerns about rushing this, and I just wanted to make those comments.
Colleen, you had your hand up before.
I did, thank you. I was actually looking at, it's on page 31, Chris, item 4.11, where it talks about the netting around the first and third baseline end poles. Now so I'm just wondering if that's going to affect the game of baseball, that little 1% there, or is it, I guess it's doable. Or do we spend a little bit extra and get the proper netting?
Okay, well, I'm not specifically certain what Kyle is referring to
Okay.
with 411, so I would have to roll back to that, but I do believe it's all proper netting throughout the sections where the net is being proposed to be installed, so.
Okay. Okay, so I know you wanted to move on to the options and talk about the options. So I do have one more question, but I'll wait until you do that part, okay?
Someone else, Carol.
I just wanted to ask in regards to what Mayor Payson has just stated, does anybody, Elise or Ms. McIsaac, are you able to tell us how much money we still have left in the pandemic funding that we receive from the government?
I believe the reference that Mayor Payson made was to the gas tax funding. So in the interim financial officer's comments included on the report is his indication that if council did want to proceed, one of the funding sources would be the community building fund, which is the gas tax of the 1.25 million. To get an update on the status of the COVID related funding, we would have to check in with the financial officer. So that information could be provided to you via email.
Okay, and I just have one further question, and this would be to Ms. Davison. You said that we've got one application for grant funding out there and it's pending. Would you be able, if it goes through, would you be able to at least tell us approximately what kind of money we're looking at?
Yes, and if my don't hold me to it, but I believe it was in the neighborhood of $300,000.
Thank you.
Robert, you had another question?
I was going to make a motion so we can discuss it.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
I would move option 2 and hopefully that the installation could be completed early next year before the 2022 baseball season. Option 2, I move.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Colleen. Chris, would that be a possibility if we went with option 2 to have it prepared for next season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tricia, go ahead.
Sorry, I just looked up an email just to confirm because the number didn't feel right rolling off my tongue. So it was in the neighborhood of $235,000.
No.
Thank you. Still sounds good.
Any other questions or discussion?
Nope.
Okay, if not, we do have a motion on the floor for option number 2. All those in favor of that motion?
Aye.
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 Motion is carried.
Mr. Santori, sorry, I'm against because I wanted it to be deferred to the 2022 fiscal year for discussion.
Yeah, no, as noted.
Thank you.
Chair Santori, if you could just perhaps call for those who are voting in opposition, just for the record.
Okay, I'll do the vote again. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number, are there any other questions? Not hearing any, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the capital pavement program. Chris?
Okay, so next item is the 2021 capital payment.
Yeah.
The recommendation is that council approve the award of the 2021 capital payment project or program contract to Selkirk Paving Limited with a base price of $297,099 plus all applicable taxes, fees, and charges.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
Done.
Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, do we still have a quorum here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
You do.
Next item from Dave Moorhead is the Lower Centennial irrigation replacement and a request that $96,000 plus applicable taxes be expended for the upgrade of this system. Chris, do you want to elaborate, please?
Okay, so again, the Lower Centennial Irrigation Project. The recommendation is that council approve the award of the Lower Sunnydale Irrigation Replacement Project to Alva Irrigation Limited in the amount of $96,000 plus all applicable taxes, fees, and charges. And further, that the remaining $4,750 be funded through residual budget amounts from the Haley Park Diamond Remediations Project.
Yes, good. Okay. Let's go.
So move.
Moved by
Second.
Councillor Garofoli Robinson. Who seconded that? Sorry.
Me, Robert.
Just a question, Chris, is
Yes.
the current system totally obsolete and not functional?
It is obsolete. We had a part fail and it took us 3.5 months to get a part. And I believe it was a borrowed part, which another municipality from the interior actually donated to us. So it's a very old system. And well, it's the oldest system left for us. So
Okay,
we don't have any parts available.
okay, thank you. So all those in favor of the motion?
Hey,
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is the swing set supply and installation contract award.
Okay, so the swing set supply and installation contract. The recommendation is that council approve the award of the swing set supply and installation contract to Green Roots Play Equipment Incorporated with a base price of $105,497,000 plus all applicable taxes, fees, and charges. So the background on this project is that I will draw your attention back to the last GOC meeting where we spoke about the Haley Park playground set coming out and installing swing sets or playgrounds, swing sets, sorry, in Pope Park, Ossett Lane Park, and Upper Sunnydale Park.
mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. So moved.
Moved by
I'll
Councillor
second.
Fischel, seconded by Lisa. Any questions of Chris or concerns?
None.
Sorry, Colleen, go ahead.
I just had a quick question because I know we discussed the playground set when we talked about the tower going in at Popo Park. And there was some question about whether TELUS might want to put some money towards that new swing set. If you guys remember, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's the opportunity to reach out to them now and see if they're willing to donate some money to that particular playground. I don't know, Michelle, if you've got any
Sure.
comments on that?
Chair Santori, if I may.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, there was a suggestion advanced by a resident of Shavers Bench who suggested that perhaps the playground could be improved as part of the TELUS project. But I do want to remind council that we had negotiated an agreement with TELUS for the installation of that infrastructure. And with that, we will be receiving a $15,000 a year fee to that. So with this funding in the capital budget, it would be appropriate for council to proceed with the playground improvements as part of your budgeted process.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is the carpenter shop roof replacement, and recommendation is not to proceed on the basis of only one contract bid coming in at way over budget. Did you have anything further that you wanted to add to that, Chris?
Not really.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That's okay. The roof on the carpenter shop, although is in the age in which it needs to replace, it has not failed. So deferring it to 2022 will not cause any damage to the building infrastructure. So the recommendation is that council direct staff to not proceed with the Carpenter Shop roof replacement project at this time, given the sole tender received is significantly over budget. And that council direct staff to advance a new funding request for the Carpenter Shop roof replacement project for council consideration during their 2022 council budget deliberations.
That motion.
We need a motion for a negative motion, Michelle, to not proceed?
Well, you would want to pass the motion because direction to the person who submitted a bid would be recommended. So it does give staff that authorization, knowing that this project is going to be deferred.
Okay, so it was moved by Lisa. Do we have a seconder?
And second.
Seconded by Paul. If there are no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Next is the Milligan Avenue Water and Sewer Replacement Project. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so again, this project ties with the Green Avenue works. So proceeding with replacing the water service or the water main on Milligan Ave will allow us to reconfigure how we direct water into the west side. And it will allow us to avoid reinstalling the water main on Green Avenue. So although we are doing some piping modifications to Green Avenue, that water main, which caused all the headache, will be removed. And we will be enhancing the water main on Milligan Avenue to support water delivery up to the west side. This was originally advanced to council as two separate projects. One was a water project and another was a sewer project. However, they are closely linked at the Milligan or at I'll say the north side of the project work zone. So we decided to combine them because the contractor will be on site doing the water line and there will be components of the sewer which will be exposed at that time. So, and vice versa. So we decided to put them together. So we tendered the project and we received two bids from two reputable contractors. You can see by the bids advanced, Marwest Industries advanced a bid of $373,891.50. And CopCan Civil Limited advanced a bid of $664,700.
Wow.
True Consulting did a comprehensive review of the bids, and they were both legal or good bids. And the recommendation from True is that we proceed with Marwest, even though they were considerably less than our budgeted amount. However, the offset in the bid price and the budget amounts will allow us to do a bunch of optional work, which we may not have been able to do had we only received one bid. So the recommendation moving forward, well, if there's no questions.
What was the original budget on this?
The combined budget was $750,000.
Okay. And I'm assuming that, and I'm assuming that the scope of work is the same.
Yes. So the combined budgets were $725,000.
Okay.
Yes, and the scope of work is the same. And as with the Green Avenue job, it's really just based on contractor availability. So that's how it's going.
All right. What are the wishes of council? Moved by Eleanor, seconded by Lisa. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
There was a two-part to that recommendation.
Yeah, go ahead.
The second part, the first part was that council approved the award of the Milligan Ave Water and Sewer Replacement Project to Marwest Industries, the amount of $373,891.50 plus all applicable taxes, fees, and charges. And the second part is that council approved the use of True Consulting for contract administration and construction management duties in the base amount of $45,000 plus all applicable taxes, fees, and charges. True Consulting worked with staff extensively on the design and tendering of the project.
Okay, so we don't need two separate motions for this then, Michelle? I was doing two separate ones.
You don't require two separate, as long as that's the understanding of Councillor Gattafoni Robinson and Mayor Payson who moved and seconded the motion, and then the understanding of all of council as you're voting on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all those in favor then?
Mm-hmm.
Aye.
Motion is carried.
I'll move 4-6, Councillor Santori.
That's the Redstone Park Playground resurfacing project.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, that's, Robert made a motion. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Okay, for the public's benefit, Chris, maybe you might want to just give us a brief overview regarding this project.
Yeah, so back in March of 2021, a resident in the neighborhood of Tadnak inquired into the possibility of changing out the play base in the Tadnak playground from the current pea gravel to the now preferred rubberized play base. At that point, it was discussed with Tricia Davidson and David Moorhead, and they informed the staff provided an internal cost to do the work, and the Tadnak Residents Association is now also assisting the resident with fundraising. So in order for some of the bigger funding applications to be submitted, there needed to be a council resolution in support of the project. So where the dollar value of the current resolution of $63,000 comes from is the outstanding amount that was applied for but not yet received, and the big $25,000 CBT community development grant of $25,000. So assuming that all of the grants are received, the actual cost to the city will be about $32,000, I believe. Yes, so the city contribution will be $32,000. However, if none of the grants are received beyond today, the city cost will be $63,000. However, staff feels that it's a good project to advance because the rubberized play base is safer than the, although approved pea gravel, it's just a better play base.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 4.7 is the flower bed maintenance contract. David or Chris?
So the flower bed maintenance contract expires the end of October of this year. As noted in the report, the flower bed contract has been extended numerous times since 1995, since it was originally awarded to MB Landscape Design. Since that time, the flower bed landscape, no pun intended there, throughout the city has changed with the addition of CIB to the mix. So we're at a juncture now where the contract is expiring. Staff is aware that the CIB directors have provided some kind of correspondence that they may or may not be continuing with the program for or into the foreseeable future. So really, the intent of the report is just to let council know that, first off, staff is not bringing forward an issue with the current landscape contractor. Just want to make that clear. We feel that the current landscape contractor is doing good work for the contract that's in place. You'll see that there was an email submitted by the current landscape contractor for council consideration. So I know that the current contractor, Sana Shante, is very passionate about her work, and I don't want, or staff doesn't want her to feel like this is a slight towards her in any manner. It's just that since my tenure in the position, when a service contract comes due, particularly a long-term service contract, I've been wanting to go to test the market to see if there is good value in what we're doing. However, referring back to the CIB portion of this discussion, so we don't know staff is not completely aware of CIB's intentions of how they want to continue with doing their work or not. So the ask right now in the recommendation is that council asks CIB to provide clarification on their continued interest in maintaining the CIB designated flower beds, and further that council directs staff to proceed to post a request for expression of interest for the flower bed maintenance contract once clarification from CIB is received. So that recommendation comes from the analysis which is provided by David Moorhead, in that we're not certain we're actually going to have a large return if we went directly to a request for proposal with a new flower bed contract. So once we can get direction from council on how to proceed with the flower beds, then we would like to go to the market with an request for an expression of interest, so we can give council some kind of certainty that if we go to the market, we're actually going to get a return, as opposed to going to the market and not getting any return and then trying to figure out how to manage flower beds post that, right? So hopefully that kind of makes some sense. So any questions on or comments?
Carol, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes, hi, Chris. On, excuse me, financial considerations on page 64 of my document, when you quote in all between the two entities, 215,000 is designated for flower bed work items. This year, the donated volunteer work, if we were charging that out at minimum wage, comes to 22,632. So was that 22,000 also included in that, or would we have to consider that to be included now?
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure where that
If this went into a full contract, we're not going to have volunteer hours anymore. So the volunteer hours now that we haven't had to pay for, if we had to pay for, if we didn't have volunteers, would equate to $22,632 for this year, up to date, up to now. So if this all went out to a full contract and there was no volunteers, the amount of 215,000 wouldn't be the best amount that we could be working with. It could be considerably higher.
It could be.
Yes.
That's the reality of it. Once you go to tender, then you get the prices, right? So
yeah.
I won't
So
be able to
anybody
comment on that, but it wasn't included in the analysis. No.
Yeah. So anybody, yeah, if that went out for tender, who was ever bidding, is going to have to realize that there was a lot of volunteer hours put into this. So it just gives them an idea of the amount of employees they would need to manage what has been managed between the two entities to date, right?
Well, I think what would happen, you know, the contract would look different. Well,
yes,
of course, in the discussion with CIB, we would also expect some return on what is the expectation with the flower beds.
Yeah.
If we're managing it in a contract, they're not going to look as extravagant as they do today.
No.
It would not be the expectation. So
yeah, there will be some sacrifices.
There would have to be, I believe.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Carol, has there been any indication that the CIB may not want to continue on that you know of? Or?
Well, I know that Dan is still taking an active role, and he's going to be retiring from tech, I think, in the upcoming year. And I know the pressure's on from Lana, if I can speak freely, that she would like us to enjoy more of the retirement time. Dan has a real passion, though, for Communities in Bloom. So I think he still want to, even if it's just not as active as he is now, have a consultative role. But it depends upon how the city too, if they still want to work with the two entities, we might be able to move forward with that. Even though we've had, I think it's 20 new volunteers come forward this year, which is incredible. We have to realize that most of these volunteers are getting up into the well seniors category. And if the younger people don't step up into this, then eventually we're going to run out of volunteers as well. So there's a few things on the horizon that could change the whole process for Community in Bloom, how they want to proceed with this. And I know Rachel Brown, who I've said 1,000 times, we should be very thankful we have her. And some of the volunteers we have are absolutely incredible. The gardens, if I can just mention this, the gardens as you cross the bridge and heading to go up the hill all on the left-hand side, the majority of the flowers that are in that garden were growing in the basement, started in the basement of one of our volunteers. She moved them all into the garden and planted them. So there was almost no cost for that garden in terms of the purchase of flowers. So just little things like that will start to change. And I know some of the volunteers that are passionate are hoping that they can still do volunteer work. So we're having a meeting in September, and I think this is going to be heavy on the agenda. And at the end of that meeting, I can probably get back to you with more accurate information. So realizing that maybe that hasn't told you exactly what you want to hear, Councillor Santori, it's about the much information I have at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Okay, so we have two recommendations on the floor. Were there any other questions? Sorry,
Lisa
Lisa.
has her hand up.
So I'd like to move the recommendations as listed. Again, move them both together and just make a comment that I think the intention of the report, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, is to have that discussion with CIB to see what direction they want to take so that you can potentially build an RFP or future service around. If CIB wants to continue on, then that's great. But if they have no intention of continuing on, that really changes the service paradigm of what we need to be looking at from a city perspective. So I think CIB will have, adequate opportunity to tell the city how they would like to be engaged and if they'd like to continue with the work that they're doing right now and to what level and scope.
Yeah.
Yes, and irrespective of the return from CIB, we would still like to go out for a request for an expression of interest for the flower bed maintenance contract. So regardless of the scope, whether it's the existing scope or it's enhanced somewhat because CIB wants to hand over some beds, irrespective of that, we still want council approval to go to request for expression of interest to see if there are interested parties on our flower bed maintenance contract.
Excuse my ignorance. Why wouldn't we just go out for a bid as opposed to expression of interest?
We would just like to have some
we
level of certainty that moving in that direction is the way to go, given the small market area that we're in. So otherwise, if we don't get any returns, then we will have to look at negotiating with the current landscape contractor directly.
No question.
Okay. Go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, Chris, under financial considerations, 6.4, if we brought the worker into house as one of our employees, a unionized employee, the cost of it is $180,500 per year.
Yes.
So is that a seasonal worker? That's a full-time worker?
That's a seasonal worker. So, and that includes everything. That's labor, equipment costs, and materials. So that would include flowers, a vehicle, anything else required for plantings. It's 2 employees, and they would be employed on a seasonal term. And so you would be, as with any seasonal worker, you'd be up in the air season after season, whether or not they were going to return. And with the qualifications that would be required, it would be seemingly complicated or difficult to fill that position regularly, fill those positions, regularly. So.
Okay, is that like a 6-month position, April to September or something?
Right now we would go April through October because there are some closed down operations that our current contractor does in October.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, it's been moved and seconded. I believe it's been seconded.
You need a
Okay, moved by
Chair Santori.
It was moved by Lisa. Motion was made by Lisa. Do we have a seconder to proceed as recommended?
I will.
Seconded by Carol. Carol's got it. All those in
Okay.
favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to the airport, item 5.1, airport truck replacement.
Move is recommended.
Do we have a seconder? So moved by Robert, seconded by Colleen. All those in favor of the motion?
Question.
Question, go ahead, Carol.
Question. I just wondered, is the present vehicle in such a shape that we could not hold out for one more year on that?
I'll just remind council that we did send this communication out to you in late July and seek your input with respect to the replacement of this truck. It's an important piece of equipment for the airport. And it felt very important to get the purchase underway. So with the results of the email poll, all of council had spoken in favor of the purchase and awarding the contract for the replacement of the airport truck to Commercial Truck Equipment Company in an amount not to exceed $115,000, including taxes. And with that approval, staff have taken steps to seek out the purchase of the truck. And at this point, we are just getting council's endorsement of the motion in a duly convened meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead,
Thanks,
Carol.
Ms. Kaiser. The only reason I brought it up was I understand Mayor Paysen's concerned with our budgeting and our spending, and I just thought maybe that's something we could look at. But I remember, yes, thank you.
Any other
Can I
questions?
ask a question?
Yep, go ahead, Eleanor.
Is this extra $15,000, Michelle, is that included in the 114?
No.
No? Isn't it, that's not this additional 15,000?
So that's just a requirement to increase the budget that was initially put forward and approved by council. That 15,000 is in fact included within the purchase price. So
Okay,
we're just amending the budget to reflect the price that's been received.
okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Next is voting delegates for the MIA. Michelle?
Yes, thank you, Chair Santori. Annually, council does consider the appointment to the MIA BC voting delegates at the UBCM convention. The convention will be held virtually again this year, and the AGM is scheduled to take place on Monday, September 13th from 3:30 to 4:30 as part of the virtual convention. The MIA has been in touch with the city asking that we advise of our delegates. Currently, Councillor Paul Butler is the voting delegate and Councillor Colleen Jones is the alternate. Council may appoint one voting delegate and up to 2 alternates if you feel there may be conflicting schedules when you are down at the UBCM at an in-person convention. A resolution of council is required when the list is changed, but for consideration this year, because the convention is being held virtually, all of the meetings that you have requested with provincial ministries, I understand are being held the week prior, so there wouldn't be the usual conflict in schedules. So it is up to council if you do feel a change in your voting delegates is required. Presently, again, it's Councillor Paul Butler and Councillor Colleen Jones assigned as the alternate. So a motion would only be required if you are wishing to make a change.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So I have absolutely no concern with Councillor Butler and Councillor Jones holding the 1 and 2 positions. I would like to be added on as the 3rd position. You just never know what happens with demands and commitments, and it's no problem to have. They're offering to have 2 alternates, so I would like to sit in the 3rd position. So I would like to make a motion that Councillor Butler retain the 1st position, Councillor Jones be added as the 1st alternate, and myself be added as the 2nd alternate.
Second. Seconded by Robert. Any discussion? Nope. Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Councillor Santori,
Yep, go ahead.
Could I just ask Michelle McIsaac to please read back the motion?
That council appoint Councillor Paul Butler as the voting delegate, and Councillors Colleen Jones and Mayor Payson, Mayor Lisa Payson as the alternatives for the AGM of the MIABC to be held Monday, September 13th, 2021.
Okay, so Mayor Payson had suggested that Councillor Jones be the first alternate and she be the second alternate. So could we please have that correction incorporated into the motion?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6.2, City of Trail Communicable Disease Plan. Tricia?
Thank you, Councillor Santori. So this report deals with now that the province of BC is in step 3 of its restart plan, things like COVID-19 safety plans, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about and would probably like to see that you never hear about again, kind of go by the wayside, unless for some reason that the health authority tells us that we have to go back a step or two. But in light of no longer having a COVID-19 safety plan, WorkSafe BC has now required that we create something called a communicable disease plan, which basically will replace the safety plans, but also is meant to build on what we learned through the development of our COVID-19 safety plans and how to kind of keep our work safe or our work sites healthy, especially as we go into yet another kind of season of communicable disease issues. So a group of people through the city, so we had representatives from City Hall, the Occupational Health and Safety Committee, Recreation, Public Works, and I believe that was it, come together to try to see what a communicable disease plan would look like that we thought we could build upon within each department as needed. So as we've seen with COVID, the impacts on different departments have been varied, but also to kind of have us all under one sort of umbrella that we could all sort of use as a foundation should we have to implement strategies related to dealing with a communicable disease in the future. So I think one of the big pros that came out of this process was that we all came together and worked towards creating a united understanding as to how we would respond and create processes on how the communication would flow should we have to develop a response to an issue in the future. So there's an attachment in your documentation that outlines the communicable disease plan in 4 steps. I think what is really important to notice is that there's various sites and places that we will monitor information and kind of pay attention to what's going on in both the province and possibly our local community so that we can conduct proper risk assessments for our work sites and more or less remember that this hasn't gone away and that it's something that we do need to kind of continue to manage going forward. We outline a whole list of ways that we will implement measures, practices, and policies to reduce risk in our work sites. And we created communication measures and practices and policies on how we would work together and work with the public on making sure that everyone knew what our processes were or what the expectations of entering or using city services or city facilities going forward might look like. And then lastly, kind of how we would monitor our workplace and kind of update this plan as necessary. So we kind of make some commitments as an organization as to how we will review this plan, how it's working, and how we may need to shift and alter it, knowing that it's a living document that, you know, it's kind of going to be our first go at it and we'll see how it works and adjust it as necessary. And I think maybe the bottom little chart on page 2 of the attachment, it's kind of how the COVID has rolled out where either the CAO or the mayor become aware that there's a communicable disease issue that's going to impact our local community. So that would become known to the city. That would then initiate the CAO or an alternate to implement the response team that is outlined in this plan to then work through and develop appropriate responses for the city as well as within each department. And then we would communicate what our plans are back to city council via the CAO or their alternate. and then we would implement the plan kind of across the organization. So the idea is that we're united. We wanted council to be assured that if you heard something about a communicable disease plan requirement out there in the world, that you knew that the staff team had this in hand and that we were prepared in the event that we can go forward or have to take a step backwards as we continue to deal with communicable diseases within our community. And I'll just leave it at that. This is being presented to you for information. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any
Chair
questions?
Santori- Chair Santori, I will move the recommendation that to receive the report for information.
Moved by Lisa. Do we have a seconder? Paul? Any further? Carol, you have a question?
Yes, probably as fair as to address this to Mayor Payson. Do you think this is something we should post on our website once it's completed?
I'm not sure why that's an appropriate question for me. I'm going to defer to staff to answer that.
Okay, and I'll refer it to Ms. McIsaac.
I can speak to that. Thank you. With respect to the plan itself, it's already on our website because it is one of the agenda items, but this is an internal document and it's not necessarily one that we would include on our website because there's no public component to it. It really is a management plan for our city employees and our internal departments. But the information about it is already on the website with today's agenda.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Moving on to item 7, grants and aid. You received the report on grants to organizations dated to August 11th. First of all, there's a recommendation that report be received as circulated.
So moved.
Moved by Robert. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Colleen.
I will, Eleanor.
All those
Sorry.
in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Request for a prize donation. Sorry.
Chair
Oh,
Santori,
sorry,
I
Colin.
just want to say that I am going to recuse myself from 7.2. The KBRH Health Foundation is the recipient of the proceeds from this event. It's not an event that we're hosting. It's considered a third-party event, but because I am the executive director of the organization, I feel that I need to recuse myself. So I'm just going to move into the lobby and staff can come and let me know when I can come back in.
Okay. So noted by Michelle that Mayor Payson has left the meeting. So,
Councillor Santori, Michelle, would it be appropriate for myself to recuse myself as well from this, or?
So as a board member, you would have a potentially different lens that you're looking through rather than the Mayor Payson as the executive director of the foundation. What you would need to satisfy yourself with is if you have any bias towards the organization as a result of your participation in the board. And that would be a decision for you to make.
I think just to keep it safe, I will remove myself then.
Can we text you to have you call back in? Okay, thank you.
I'll just leave the office, please text.
I'll move $250 gift certificates.
I'll second it.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Okay. Just waiting for Paul. There he is. Okay, the next request is from Community Futures, and that's a request for cash in the amount of $4,000. Michelle, did you want to provide some detail around this? Or-
think the application coming in from Community Futures is quite comprehensive. They are looking for the grant funding to support efforts that they make with respect to economic development. They are seeking grant funding and hoping that the city's contribution will add to that. The project is described. I haven't had any personal interaction with Community Futures with respect to this application, but they have the support and looking for further support from the local municipalities. So funding support has been provided by the city of Roslyn, and they're also looking from the other neighbors to the city of Trail.
Is there any, I don't see anything here in terms of the amounts that have been raised to date or requested.
I believe I recall that the city of Roslyn has supported it in the amount of $2,000.
Lisa?
Yeah, so I was really happy to see the level of, or the letters of support for this, because I really wasn't quite sure, knowing that the regional district takes care of emergency management, how this would interface. And I didn't know if it was a duplication or what that interfacing looked like. So I was really happy to see the RDKB emergency management letter of support. I'm happy to see the city of Roslyn come in, and I'm fine with moving the $4,000, but I'm just wondering, they say in the application that I think it's well over $20,000 to have this. The anticipated cost is in excess about $20,000 for the website portion of this program. So, you know, I'm not entirely sure if full funding is needed before they can even go forward with the program, or if they have some level of kind of buffer there, or they're going to do part of the website. I just don't quite understand that part of the application. So I'm fine with putting forward $4,000, but I'm just wondering if we should do it like we do some of the other grants, where contingent on Community Futures receiving adequate funding to move forward with the program, because I most certainly don't want to provide $4,000 to a program that is not implementable because they don't have adequate funding to complete the project.
Okay, so Lisa's motion is to proceed with the 4,000 subject to the project coming to fruition. Is that okay?
Yeah, do you have better wording on that, Michelle?
That council agreed to supply a $4,000 cash grant contingent on Community Futures receiving adequate funding to proceed with the project, or sufficient funding to proceed.
Funding.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great.
To
Thank
proceed
you.
with the project.
Okay, seconded by Robert.
No, I was going to ask a question.
Okay,
I'll wait for another seconder.
somebody want to second the motion for 4,000? Paul, go ahead, Robert.
Well, I just don't understand, because Community Futures gets its money, my understanding, from taxpayers eventually. I mean, that's where it comes from. And I just don't understand how Community Futures, it's much like CAST or anything else like that, or I don't understand why it doesn't follow under the umbrella, say, of the LCIC, you know, where they're looking there in terms of having their websites there. So I'm not quite clear on this. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. I just don't understand.
Councillor Kashoni, I'm not entirely sure, but I think Community Futures is a federally funded organization for their core funding. But what they do is they go out to request for grant funding for particular projects that are more community and local area specific. So I believe that this would be one of those projects that they would probably fall outside of their core funding mandate, and in order to have it come to fruition on a community level, because that's what they feel is important for our greater trail communities. That's why they're asking for grant funding. And they have had quite a few, if I can say, Zoom calls or conference meetings on this to try to get to this stage of feasibility.
It doesn't fall under an economic development to LCIC then, eh?
Well, I think it's the same concept of, we've got the Chamber of Commerce, we've got the LCIC, we've got Community Futures, and they really operate in very different paths of economic development. Yes, they kind of converge in some areas, but not necessarily.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know.
Well, just a quick comment, if I could, is, you know, 2 of the 3 letters that we got here, is it 3 letters? 2 of them are just for support, recognizing that the work they do, and the letter is to show them that they do support them. So basically, is that what our letter will be? Or is it saying something, you know, differently? There's $4,000 there if this does come to fruition, or basically, I don't know. It doesn't look like this. There's only one. The city of Roslyn is offering $2,000, and the other 2 letters are just letters of support.
Yeah.
So the motion that I'm making is in response to their grant application where they're asking for $4,000 for funding. I can't speak to, aside from the city of Roslyn, who it's documented $2,000, if the Castlegar Source and the RDKB are being asked for funding, I can't speak to that. I'm just speaking to the fact that they're asking for us for $4,000. And I think our letter would read that we've, if council agrees, approved the $4,000 conditional on them getting sufficient funds to implement the project.
Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't support the $4,000 request, but I'd be open to considering a lower amount. But right now I cannot support the 4,000.
You
Well,
can
then
make
you
an
can
amendment to
you
the
can move a
motion.
different amount, Carol. You can move an amendment.
Okay, I'd make an amendment to the motion that we support $2,000 as per Roslyn.
Do we have a seconder to the amendment?
I'll second
will.
the discussion. Yeah, that's fine.
Seconded by Robert. Okay. Motion on the amendment first, is it?
So,
Go ahead, Pauline.
There would be discussion.
is that if the project goes through again, they get the $2,000, or we just give them the $2,000?
No.
No, it would be exactly the same motion, just substituting the amount.
Okay.
Okay, so motion on the amendment then is for $2,000 with the subject to on it. All those in favor of the amendment?
I,
I
The amendment is carried. Motion on, we need a motion on the original motion of 4,000.
no,
All
you
those-
have a motion on the amended motion now.
Correct.
I'm
So
sorry.
you've substituted the amount of 2,000 for 4,000, and just voted on that. So now what you'll want to do is vote on the motion as amended.
Okay. all
Or you
those in favor-
substituted the amount of 4,000 for 2,000. If I said that in reverse, I'm sorry. And now you'll vote on the motion as amended.
All those in favor of the motion as amended?
Yes.
Motion is carried. And now we'll call for adjournment, and then we have to reconvene closed.